At the edge of a quiet countryside road stood a small stone bridge that most travelers crossed without thinking twice. It was not famous, not especially old compared to many historic structures, and not particularly large. Built from heavy gray stones and shaped in a gentle arch over a narrow stream, it looked much like hundreds of other rural bridges scattered across the region. Yet there was something strange about it. No matter the season, no matter the weather, the surface of the bridge was always damp. On scorching summer afternoons, when the surrounding pavement cracked with dryness and heat shimmered above the road, the bridge remained darkened with moisture. The stones glistened slightly, as if they had just been sprayed with water. Drivers sometimes noticed it when sunlight reflected off the surface. Cyclists felt it under their tires when the road suddenly changed texture. Walkers stepping onto the bridge often paused, puzzled by the faint coolness under their shoes. The surrounding road would be dry enough to collect dust, but the bridge itself was wet, and no one could explain why. A curious observation for years, the damp bridge was little more than a curiosity among local residents. Farmers who drove their trucks across it daily noticed the difference but assumed it had something to do with the nearby stream. Probably just moisture coming up from the ground, some would say. Others guessed the stones absorbed water from the air at night. But the mystery grew deeper during particularly hot summers. During heat waves, when weeks passed without rain, every surface in the area turned pale and dusty. Even the stream running beneath the bridge sometimes shrank to a trickle. Yet the bridge remained the same, dark, moist, and slightly slick to the touch. People began pointing it out to visitors. "Watch when you cross the bridge," locals would say. "It's always wet," and it was. The first measurement, instantly the strange condition caught the attention of a group of civil engineers conducting routine inspections on regional infrastructure. One of them, a structural engineer named Laura Jensen, heard about the damp bridge during a conversation at a roadside cafe. Curious, she decided to take a closer look. At first glance, the bridge seemed completely ordinary. It had been constructed in the late 1800s using traditional stone masonry techniques. The arch carried a narrow two-lane road across a shallow stream surrounded by low grasses and trees. But the surface told a different story. While the asphalt road approaching the bridge was dry and dusty, the stone surface was noticeably darker. Laura knelt and touched it. The stones were cool and damp. Not soaked, not dripping, just persistently moist. She returned the following day during the afternoon heat. The temperature had climbed above 35°C, and the surrounding road had become hot enough to radiate warmth through the soles of her shoes. But the bridge was still damp. It was time to investigate more seriously. The underground leak. The most obvious explanation seemed simple. Water must be seeping upward from underground. Perhaps an old pipe had cracked beneath the bridge. Maybe groundwater was pushing through tiny gaps in the stonework. Engineers brought equipment to test the theory. Ground-penetrating radar scanned beneath the bridge structure. Sensors measured soil moisture levels on the foundations. Specialists examined the stream below to see if hidden channels might be feeding water upward through the masonry. But the results surprised them. There was no underground leak. The stone foundations were intact, and the surrounding soil showed no unusual water flow. Moisture levels beneath the bridge were nearly identical to those measured along the nearby road. The stream itself flowed normally and set several meters below the bridge deck. No cracks or hidden pipes connected it to the surface. In other words, nothing below the bridge appeared capable of supplying the constant dampness above. The mystery deepened. Testing the stony attention then shifted to the bridge's construction materials. Unlike modern bridges made of steel and concrete, this one had been built entirely from natural stone blocks quarried from nearby hills. Some types of stone are known to absorb moisture easily. Limestone, for example, contains tiny pores that can trap water from rain or humidity. Perhaps the stones were simply holding onto moisture longer than the surrounding asphalt. To test this idea, engineers took small samples from several blocks along the edge of the bridge. Laboratory analysis revealed that the stones indeed contained microscopic pores capable of absorbing water. However, the absorption rate alone could not explain the phenomenon. Even highly porous stone typically dries within hours under strong sunlight. Yet the bridge surface remained damp day after day, even during prolonged dry weather. Something else had to be happening. The cooling effect. Another clue came from temperature measurements. Sensors placed on the bridge surface consistently recorded temperatures several degrees cooler than the surrounding pavement. This difference was noticeable even in direct sunlight. While the asphalt road absorbed heat quickly, the thick stone blocks of the bridge warmed more slowly and released heat more gradually. This meant that during hot days, the bridge remained cooler than the air around it. Cool surfaces often attract condensation, tiny droplets of water forming when warm, humid air touches something colder. But could condensation alone keep an entire bridge damp all day long? At first, engineers were skeptical. Condensation usually appears overnight or early in the morning, then evaporates once temperatures rise. Yet here the dampness seemed to persist well into the afternoon. Still, the temperature difference offered an important clue. The role of airflow for the study revealed another subtle factor. The bridge sat in a small valley where air moved differently than it did along the open road. During the day, warm air from surrounding fields drifted slowly toward the cooler stream below. As that air passed across the stone surface of the bridge, it cooled slightly. When warm, moisture-filled air cools, it releases water in the form of condensation. Under normal circumstances, sunlight would quickly dry that moisture. But the bridge's thick stones absorbed some of the water and released it slowly. Combined with the cooler surface temperature, this created a repeating cycle. 1. Warm, humid air flows over the bridge. 2. The stone cools the air slightly. 3. Condensation forms on the surface. 4. The stone absorbs and holds moisture. 5. Evaporation occurs slowly because the surface stays cool. The process repeats throughout the day. In effect, the bridge constantly recharges its own dampness. Still not the full answer, although the airflow and condensation theory explained part of the mystery. It still didn't fully account for the bridge's consistency. Why did the surrounding pavement remain dry if the air carried so much moisture? The answer appeared to lie in the difference between stone and asphalt. Asphalt heats quickly under sunlight, often becoming much warmer than the surrounding air. When warm air touches a hot surface, condensation cannot form. The stone bridge, however, behaved differently. Its mass acted like a thermal reservoir, absorbing coolness overnight and maintaining low temperatures during the day. This made it one of the few surfaces in the area capable of triggering condensation under the right conditions. In simple terms, the bridge acted like a natural cooling plate, quietly pulling moisture from the air. The mystery remains even with these explanations. Not every engineer was completely satisfied. Measurements showed that humidity levels near the stream were slightly higher than elsewhere along the road, which supported the condensation theory. But the exact balance of temperature, airflow, and stone absorption required to maintain constant dampness remained complex. Some researchers suspected additional factors might be involved, perhaps microscopic algae or biofilms on the stone surface that helped retain moisture. Others believed tiny cracks inside the stone could store water deeper within the bridge structure, slowly releasing it over time. In reality, the phenomenon likely resulted from several overlapping processes, each reinforcing the others. A local landmark over time, the bridge became something of a local curiosity. Cyclists often slowed down when crossing it, noticing the subtle change in texture under their tires. Photographers sometimes visited early in the morning when the moist stones reflected soft light from the rising sun. Despite its unusual condition, the bridge remained structurally sound. Engineers confirmed that the damp surface posed no serious danger as long as drivers exercised normal caution. For residents of the area, the bridge became a reminder that even ordinary structures can hold quiet mysteries. Not every puzzle hides something dramatic beneath it. Sometimes the explanation lies in simple physics, the way stone, air, water, and temperature interact in subtle ways over time. A bridge that breathes today, the old stone bridge still carries travelers across the stream, just as it has for more than a century. In the blazing heat of summer, when the road on either side turns pale and dusty, the bridge remains darker and slightly cool. Its stones continue their silent exchange with the air above, absorbing moisture, releasing it, and drawing it back again. To most people it looks as if the bridge is permanently wet. But in reality, it is doing something more delicate. It is breathing with the environment, quietly collecting water from the atmosphere and letting it go again, day after day. And that is why, no matter the weather, the bridge always seems damp.
The building stood at the edge of town, like a forgotten sentence at the bottom of a page. Its paint had long ago peeled away, exposing grey boards that had endured decades of sun, wind, and rain. Windows were broken or boarded, the playground rusted, and weeds had swallowed the asphalt yard where children once ran in circles, chasing laughter. Most people in town simply called it the old schooler, place that had closed decades earlier and quietly slipped out of memory. But every weekday morning at exactly 8 a.m., something inside the building happened. A bell rang. Not loudly, not clearly, just a soft, distant tone, the kind that seemed to travel through dust and empty corridors before dissolving into the morning air. It was so faint that at first most people assumed they had imagined it. Yet those who lived nearby began to notice a strange pattern. It always happened at the same time, and it only happened on weekdays. A sound no one expected. The first person to openly mention the bell was a retired mechanic named Mateo Alvarez, who lived in a small house across the road. He had moved there after retirement, drawn by the quiet streets and low cost of living. For months, he enjoyed peaceful mornings with coffee on his porch. Then one Tuesday morning, he heard it, a soft, metallic chime drifting across the yard. At first, he thought it might be a neighbor's phone alarm or a distant church bell carried by the wind. But the next morning, at exactly 8 a.m. again, the sound returned. And the morning after that, Mateo began watching his clock. Every weekday, the same thing happened. The faint ring of what sounded unmistakably like a school bell, echoing gently from the abandoned building across the street. Curiously, the sound never came on Saturday or Sunday. That detail made him uneasy. The old school had been closed for more than 30 years. Its electricity had been disconnected long ago, and the interior wiring had reportedly been stripped out during a brief renovation attempt in the 1990s. yet something inside still behaved as if classes were about to begin. The school's quiet history. The building had once been Lincoln Elementary School. Constructed in the late 1940s, during the town's population boom after World War II, for decades it served hundreds of students from nearby neighborhoods. Teachers remembered the building fondly. It had tall windows that filled classrooms with sunlight and a playground shaded by old oak trees. Generations of children had learned their first lessons there. But by the early 1990s, enrollment had dropped sharply. A newer school opened closer to the town center, and Lincoln Elementary was eventually closed and abandoned. The bell system had once been simple. A mechanical bell in the hallway connected to an electrical timer. At 8 a.m. sharp each weekday morning, it would ring to signal the start of classes. After the school shut down, the timer was removed along with the rest of the electrical system. The building sat unused, occasionally visited by vandals or curious teenagers. By the early 2000s, even those visits became rare. The school became just another empty structure, slowly being reclaimed by nature. The sound confirmed. For years, Matteo kept his observation mostly to himself. It seemed too strange to bring up casually. But eventually, curiosity got the better of him. One morning, he invited his friend Clara, a local librarian, to sit with him on the porch. "Just listen," he told her. At 7:59 a.m., they sat quietly. Birds chirped in the trees. A car passed down the road. The wind rustled through dry weeds. Then, precisely as the minute hand reached 12, the sound appeared. Ding, soft, metallic, brief. Clara's eyes widened. "That's a bell," she said. The two of them walked toward the old school. But by the time they reached the front steps, the sound had faded. Inside, the building was silent, except for the creaking of loose boards and the flutter of pigeons that had made nests in the rafters. No machinery, no electricity, no obvious source. The sound had lasted only a second or two, but they had both heard it clearly. Measuring the impossible word of the strange bell slowly spread through the small community. Most residents dismissed it as exaggeration or imagination. Others suggested wind moving loose metal somewhere inside the building. But one detail remained difficult to explain. The precise timing. It happened at 8 a.m. every weekday. Eventually, a local college professor named Daniel Reed heard about the story and decided to investigate. Reed specialized in acoustic measurements and environmental sound monitoring. He brought a portable sound meter and recording equipment to the site. On a Wednesday morning, he set up the devices on Matteo's porch at 7:45 a.m. The recorder ran quietly while they waited. At exactly 8 a.m., the bell rang again. This time, the instruments captured it. Later analysis confirmed what they had heard. A short, metallic tone lasting roughly 1.7 seconds, centered around a frequency consistent with a small steel bell. Even more curious, the sound appeared to originate from inside the school building, not from any nearby structure. Reed checked local infrastructure maps. There were no active churches, factories, or public announcement systems nearby that could produce such a sound. The instruments had confirmed the bell, but not its source. Exploring the interior, a small team decided to examine the school building more carefully. They entered during daylight, moving through dusty classrooms and empty hallways. The interior looked frozen in time. Old chalkboards still hung on the walls. Faded bulletin boards displayed fragments of decades-old student projects. Desks had been removed, but outlines remained where they once stood. At the center hallway, they found the old bell housing. It was mounted high on the wall above what had once been the main office doorway. But when they opened it, the interior was empty. The bell mechanism had been removed years earlier. Only rusted mounting brackets remained. The wiring that once powered it had been completely stripped from the walls. Yet the recorded sound clearly resembled a bell almost identical to the type schools commonly used in the mid-20th century. Theories began to circulate. Some suggested that temperature changes in the morning might cause metal components somewhere in the building to expand and strike each other. Others proposed that wind passing through broken pipes or ventilation shafts might produce a bell-like tone. But these explanations struggled to account for the strict schedule. Wind and temperature do not follow. Another suggestion was that the sound might originate from far away, carried by the air under certain atmospheric conditions. Acoustic reflections can sometimes travel surprising distances. Yet Reed's recordings suggested that sound was close, not distant. The signal strength dropped rapidly when measured farther down the road, as though the source truly lay inside the abandoned structure. A pattern too perfect. Saturday and Sunday. Silence. Even during holidays, when the town was quiet, the sound still occurred if the day fell on a weekday. Rain, fog, or clear skies made no difference. The tone remained consistent, always soft, always brief, always punctual. One curious observation stood out. The bell was slightly quieter during summer months when trees were thick with leaves, and slightly louder in winter when branches were bare. Schools are places built around routine. Bells organize the rhythm of learning. Start of class, lunch, recess, dismissal. For decades, Lincoln Elementary had followed that rhythm without fail. Perhaps it wasn't surprising that something, whether mechanical, environmental, or acoustic, still echoed that schedule. From a scientific perspective, several possibilities remain plausible. One is resonant vibration. Old structures sometimes contain loose metal pieces or pipes that vibrate when struck by wind gusts or temperature shifts. If the vibration occurs at a particular frequency, it can resemble the tone of a bell. Another explanation involves acoustic reflections from distant sounds. Under certain atmospheric conditions, sound waves can bend and travel long distances before reflecting off surfaces like walls or hills. If a distant bell or metallic sound occurs somewhere else at roughly the same time each morning, the abandoned school could act as a reflector that briefly concentrates the sound. There is also the possibility of structural resonance, where a building naturally amplifies particular frequencies when exposed to environmental vibrations such as passing traffic or distant machinery. But none of these theories have yet fully explained the precise weekday timing. That detail remains the most puzzling part of the phenomenon. A quiet mystery. Today, the old school still stands, though its future is uncertain. Developers have occasionally proposed demolishing the building to make room for housing, but plans never seem to move forward. Perhaps the mystery contributes to its survival. Every weekday morning, people nearby sometimes pause and listen. And at 8 a.m., just as children once hurried through its doors decades ago, the faint metallic tone appears again. Ding, soft, briefed, almost gentle, a bell that should no longer exist, ringing inside a building that no longer teaches anyone. Whether the sound comes from hidden physics, distant echoes, or some overlooked mechanical cause, no one has yet proven exactly why it happens. But, for those who hear it, the meaning feels strangely clear. The old school may be abandoned. Its classrooms may be empty.
On a lonely country road, there's an old house. No, 7. It's been empty for decades, a skeleton of a home swallowed by time and nature. But beside the road stands its mailbox, weathered and rusted. Yet one thing about it is constant. Every single day, its little red flag is up. Rain, snow, or shine, it waits. A signal for a pickup that never comes. Who keeps raising it, and why? This is the story of the house at No. 7 and the ghost who waited. My name is Sarah, and as a local historian, some mysteries are just too compelling to ignore. The house at No. 7 was one of them. The townsfolk had their stories, of course. Whispers of a ghostly figure seen by the road at twilight. A woman in a faded dress, her hand always reaching for that little red flag. But legends are one thing, facts are another. I needed to know the truth behind the legend. My investigation started where all local history does, the town archives. Poring over dusty ledgers and brittle maps, I searched for No. 7. The records showed the property last belonged to the Vance family, and the last registered resident was a woman named Eleanor Vance. The paper trail was thin, but it was a start. The old librarian, Mr. Abernathy, remembered the name. Eleanor, he said, his voice raspy with age. Quiet woman. Kept to herself after her fiancé soldier went overseas. She was always waiting by that mailbox, waiting for a letter from him. The next clue came from a microfiche machine. Scrolling through the local newspaper archives from the early 1970s, I found small mentions of Eleanor. The mystery deepened. Had she moved away? Or did something more tragic happen? The town's police records from that year were incomplete, damaged by a flood in the 80s, but I found an old officer's logbook that had survived. In it, a brief entry from October 31st, 1974. A wellness check was called for No. 7. The officer noted the house was empty, looking as if the owner had just stepped out for a moment. A pot of tea was cold on the stove. A half-finished book lay open on the table, and outside, the mailbox flag was up. The official report concluded she had likely left town without a word, but it didn't feel right. She wouldn't abandon her post, not after waiting for so long. I visited the house again, this time with a new perspective. The overgrown garden, the peeling paint, the broken windows, it wasn't just decay, it was a shrine to waiting. I imagined Eleanor, day after day, walking down this very path, raising the flag with a hopeful heart and returning with empty hands. The unwavering hope, the crushing disappointment, repeated for years. I realized the ghost stories weren't just stories. They were the echo of a profound love and an unbearable sorrow imprinted on this place. Eleanor wasn't just a missing person. She was a spirit trapped in a loop of expectation. The raised flag wasn't a prank or a mechanical quirk. It was her, still reaching out, still waiting for the news that would finally set her free. I knew then what I had to do. The law couldn't close this case. History couldn't close this case. Only compassion could. I went home and sat down at my desk, with a pen and a simple piece of paper. I decided to write the letter that Eleanor had waited her entire life for. It wasn't from David, of course. I couldn't forge that, but it could be from someone who understood. I wrote about David. I wrote about his bravery, his sacrifice. I told her that the war was long over, that the world had moved on, and that she didn't have to wait anymore. I told her that her devotion was a beautiful, powerful thing, a testament to a love that time couldn't erase. I told her that David would want her to be at peace, that her wait was finally over. I sealed the letter in an envelope and wrote a single name on the front, Eleanor. That evening, as dusk settled over the fields, I drove back to No. 7. The air was still and heavy. The house stood silhouetted against the purple sky, a silent, watchful giant. My heart pounded as I approached the mailbox. Just like every other day, the red flag was defiantly up. My hand trembled as I opened the little metal door. The empty space inside felt cold, cavernous. I took a deep breath and slid my letter inside. Then I gently pushed the door shut, the click echoing in the quiet twilight. I didn't touch the flag. I left it standing, one last time. I didn't sleep much that night. I kept picturing the lonely road, the mailbox, and the letter sitting inside. Was this foolish? Was I just talking to an empty house? The next morning, I had to know. I drove back, the early sun casting long shadows across the road. As I got closer, my breath caught in my throat. I slowed the car, my eyes fixed on the mailbox. The red flag was down. For the first time in almost 50 years, the flag was down. I parked the car and walked towards it, my footsteps sounding unnaturally loud on the gravel. I felt a mix of fear and elation. With a shaking hand, I reached out and pulled open the small, creaking door. My letter was gone, but the mailbox wasn't empty. Lying there, in the exact spot where I had placed my letter, was another one. It was an old, delicate envelope, yellowed with age, the paper almost translucent. It had no stamp, no address, just a single word written in a beautiful, looping, old-fashioned script. My name, Sarah. My hands trembled as I carefully picked it up. It felt impossibly light, as if it were made of air and memory. I opened the unsealed flap. Inside was a small, single sheet of paper, folded once. I unfolded it. The same elegant handwriting filled the page. The ink faded to a pale brown. It was just 2 words. Thank you. A wave of emotion washed over me, relief, sadness, and a profound sense of peace. I looked up from the note to the old, dilapidated house. For a moment, just a moment, I thought I saw a flicker of light in an upstairs window, like a candle being gently blown out. A final goodbye. The air felt lighter. The oppressive sadness that had clung to this place seemed to have lifted, carried away on the morning breeze. I drove away from No. 7 that day, leaving the house to its quiet rest. I never went back. I didn't need to. Every time I drive down that country road now, I glance at the mailbox. Its little red flag stays down. The vigil is over. Eleanor Vance, the ghost who waited, is finally at peace. Some stories don't end with answers, but with closure. And sometimes, a simple act of kindness can reach across the years, and even across the veil between worlds, to finally bring a lost soul home. Thanks for watching.
Have you ever walked into a room and felt like something was just off? Maybe the air felt a little thicker, or the shadows played tricks on your eyes. Well, imagine that feeling, but it never goes away. Imagine it gets stronger, day by day, year by year, until you start to question your own senses. This is the story of a room that, according to the people who work there, is slowly, inexplicably closing in on itself. Our story begins in the quiet, climate-controlled depths of a large institutional archive. We can't say exactly where, to protect the identities of those involved, but it's a place dedicated to preserving history. Rows upon rows of sterile metal shelves hold countless boxes, each one a time capsule filled with paper, photographs, and the ghosts of the past. For the archivists who work here, it's a place of order and precision. Everything has its place. Everything is measured, cataloged, and accounted for. This particular room, let's call it Archive Room B7, is nothing special at first glance. It's a standard rectangular space, about the size of a small classroom, packed with rolling shelf systems. For years, it served its purpose without incident. Staff would come and go, retrieving documents, filing new acquisitions, the daily rhythm of preservation humming along. But around 15 years ago, a subtle change began. It wasn't something you could see. It was a feeling. A junior archivist, someone who spent hours each day in B7, was the first to mention it. He'd say things like, "It feels a bit tight in here today," or "Am I just imagining it?" or "Is this all narrower than yesterday?" His colleagues would usually laugh it off. Maybe you're just getting bigger, they joke, or it's the paperwork piling up, makes everything feel cluttered. But the feeling persisted. Over the next few years, other staff members started to notice it too. It was a creeping, almost subconscious sensation. The space between the shelves seemed to diminish. The act of pulling out a large records box felt more awkward, requiring a little more twisting and turning than before. Some described it as feeling like the air pressure was slightly off, a gentle, constant squeeze you couldn't quite put your finger on. This collective feeling became a running joke, a piece of office folklore. Don't get trapped in B7, a supervisor might say to a new hire. It likes to hold on to things. But beneath the jokes, a genuine sense of unease was growing. The room was starting to feel claustrophobic. The fluorescent lights seemed to hum at a lower, more oppressive frequency. The perpetual chill of the climate control felt less like preservation and more like the cold of a tomb. The stories got stranger. An archivist swore she left a rolling cart in the main aisle with plenty of space to walk around it, only to return an hour later and find she had to squeeze past it sideways. Another claimed he once dropped a pen, and when he bent down to get it, the space felt so tight he almost got stuck. These were rational, detail-oriented people, not prone to flights of fancy. Their jobs revolved around facts and figures, and the fact was, the room felt smaller. Finally, after years of whispers and weird feelings, the head archivist, a pragmatic woman named Eleanor, decided to put an end to the nonsense, as she called it. She was tired of the spook stories and the effect it was having on morale. Her plan was simple. She would take precise measurements of the room and compare them to the original architectural blueprints from when the building was constructed. The numbers, she was certain, would prove that nothing had changed. The building was a modern, stable structure. Walls don't just move. So, one Tuesday morning, armed with a high-precision laser measuring tool, Eleanor and her most senior technician went into room B7. They planned to be thorough. They would measure the length, the width, and the height from multiple points, wall to wall, floor to ceiling. They pulled out the original blueprints, dated nearly 2 decades prior. The plans were clear. The room's interior width was specified down to the millimeter. They started with the width, the primary axis of concern. They set up the laser measure, aimed it from one concrete wall to the other, and waited for the beep. The number flashed up on the small screen. Eleanor read it, frowned, and read it again. She looked over at the blueprint, then back at the device. Run it again, she told the technician. They did. The same number appeared. They moved to a different spot along the room's length and measured the width again. And again. Each time, the result was consistent. According to their brand new, perfectly calibrated laser measure, the room was narrower than the original plan specified. The difference wasn't huge. It wasn't a foot, or even an inch. The difference was just under 2 centimeters. 2 centimeters, spread across the entire width of a room, it's almost nothing. It's less than the width of your thumb. In the grand scheme of a building, it's a rounding error, a construction tolerance. Eleanor's first instinct was relief. See, she said, trying to sound confident. It's a tiny discrepancy, probably a difference between the plan and the actual build. Nothing to worry about. But the technician, a man who had worked in the building since it opened, wasn't so sure. He remembered being there during the final construction inspections. He remembered the site manager being almost obsessive about adhering to the plans. He had a nagging feeling. He suggested they dig deeper. And this is where the story turns from a curious anomaly into something truly unsettling. They started digging through old building maintenance and survey records. They were looking for any data that could corroborate the original dimensions. And they found it, tucked away in a file from 15 years ago. Right around the time the strange feelings in the room began was a report from a routine structural survey. That survey had included a full set of measurements for the entire facility. And in that report, the width of archive room B7 was recorded. It matched the original architectural blueprints exactly. Let that sink in. 15 years ago, the room's width was precisely what it was supposed to be. Today, it is 2 centimeters smaller. Over the course of 15 years, 2 centimeters of space have, for all intents and purposes, vanished. Eleanor's skepticism evaporated, replaced by a cold, professional dread. The implications were staggering. If the room was shrinking, what was causing it? The first and most obvious explanation would be structural compression. The building was settling, or the walls were bowing inward. They immediately called in a team of structural engineers. The engineers spent a week crawling all over room B7 and the surrounding structure. They used ground-penetrating radar to look for shifts in the foundation. They placed stress gauges on the walls. They used ultrasound to check the integrity of the concrete and rebar. Their conclusion was unanimous and deeply unnerving. There was nothing wrong with the building. The foundation was perfectly stable. The load-bearing columns were sound. Heat floor above and the foundation below were not exerting any unusual pressure. Most importantly, the walls of room B7 themselves showed absolutely no signs of movement, bowing, or compression. They were, according to every instrument and test they could throw at them, perfectly plumb and static. The walls hadn't moved, and yet the space between them had decreased. This is the heart of the mystery. It's a physical impossibility, a paradox. If two opposing surfaces get closer together, at least one of them has to have moved. But all the evidence, all the scientific data, said they hadn't. The engineers wrote up their report, declared the building structurally sound, and left, shaking their heads and muttering about measurement errors. But the archivists knew better. They had the old measurement. They had the new measurement. And they had 15 years of a creeping, shared feeling that the room was closing in. The engineer's report didn't solve the mystery. It made it infinitely more terrifying. It removed all logical, physical explanations. What's happening in Archive Room B7? To this day, no one knows. The staff have their own theories, whispered in the break room. Some believe it's a slow-motion spatial anomaly, a wrinkle in the fabric of reality localized to that one room. Others wondered if the sheer weight of all that history, all those documents and forgotten lives packed onto the shelves, is somehow compressing the space itself, not physically, but metaphysically. A few even joked that the room is breathing, and that it inhaled 15 years ago and just hasn't exhaled yet. The room is still in use, but with new protocols. No one is allowed to work in there alone for an extended period. Every year, on the same day, they take a new laser measurement of the width. For the last couple of years, the measurement has held steady. The shrinking has, for now, stopped. But every time they take that measurement, there's a collective holding of breath. What if one day it's smaller again, another millimeter gone, another piece of their reality shaved away? The story of Archive Room B7 is a perfect example of how the uncanny can intrude on our very ordered, measured world. It's a reminder that sometimes the most unsettling truths aren't the ones that break the rules of physics, but the ones that seem to follow them and break them at the same time. The walls haven't moved, but the room is smaller. How do you solve a mystery when the facts themselves are a contradiction? The only thing the archivists know for sure is that somewhere in their building, there are 2 centimeters of space that are simply gone.
You know, in all my years of urban exploration, I thought I'd seen it all. I've walked through forgotten hospitals where the air is still thick with sorrow, and I've navigated the skeletal remains of factories that once hummed with life. But nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared me for what I found in apartment 7B. The building itself was a relic, a concrete monolith slowly surrendering to the city's relentless grip of decay. Most units were boarded up, but 7B was different. The door was slightly ajar, almost like an invitation. Whispers of lights turning on by themselves, shadows moving in empty rooms. The usual ghost stories you hear about any abandoned spot. I figured it was just local folklore, something to spook the neighborhood kids. Still, my curiosity got the better of me. Pushing the door open, a cloud of dust danced in a single beam of sunlight cutting through the grimy window. The air was heavy and stale, the kind of silence that has weight to it. The furniture was draped in white sheets, looking like a gathering of patient ghosts. Everything was perfectly still, preserved in a layer of time and neglect, except for one thing. A sound, a soft, rhythmic drip, drip, coming from deeper inside the apartment. It was a familiar sound, the kind you tune out in your own home. But here, in this dead space, it was the only sign of life, a tiny heartbeat in a corpse of a home. I followed the sound, my boots crunching softly on unseen debris. It led me to the bathroom. The bathroom was a time capsule of 1970s design. Avocado green tiles, a rust-stained sink. And there it was, the source of the sound. A chrome faucet, steadily leaking into the basin below. Drip, drip, drip. I almost laughed. After all the spooky stories, the big mystery was just bad plumbing. I pulled out my camera, thinking I'd just get a few atmospheric shots of the decay, the peeling wallpaper, the general sense of abandonment. I framed the faucet in my viewfinder, focusing on the way each drop formed, swelled, and then finally let go, hitting the porcelain with a soft tick. It was almost meditative. I watched for a minute, maybe two. Drop, tick, drip, drop, tick. And then it happened. A drop of water formed at the tip of the faucet, swelled to its breaking point, and fell. But just as it was about to hit the sink, it stopped. It just hung there, suspended in midair for a split second, shimmering like a tiny diamond. My brain couldn't process what I was seeing, and then it shot straight back up, rejoining the faucet with a faint, impossible little splash. I lowered my camera, blinking. Did I just see that? Was I that tired? Maybe the dust was getting to me, making my eyes play tricks. I stared at the faucet, my heart starting to thump against my ribs. Drip, drop, tick, normal. Drip, drop, tick, normal again. I must have imagined it. I raised my camera again, deciding I needed to get this on video, just in case. I had to prove to myself I wasn't losing my mind. I hit record, holding my breath, my eye glued to the small screen. The faucet dripped. 1 drop, 2, 3, all normal. I was about to give up, to chalk it up to a waking dream, when it happened again. A droplet fell, stopped, and then zipped right back up into the spout. This time I had it. I had it on camera. A jolt of adrenaline shot through me. It was real. I zoomed in closer, my hands trembling slightly. And that's when the real show began. It wasn't just 1 drop anymore. Another one fell and reversed. Then 2 at once. They didn't just fly straight up. They began to move with a strange, fluid grace. They'd fall halfway, hover, then spiral back upwards, like tiny silver ballerinas performing a silent, liquid dance. It was mesmerizing. The steady rhythm of the drips was gone, replaced by a chaotic yet beautiful spectacle. Drops would shoot up, merge with the faucet, and then new ones would fall, only to defy gravity themselves. Some would loop around each other before ascending. It was a fountain in reverse, a silent, impossible ballet of water that broke every law of physics I knew. My fear was still there, a cold knot in my stomach, but it was being overshadowed by a profound sense of awe. What was I witnessing? Some kind of localized magnetic anomaly? A trick of air pressure? Or something else entirely? Something that didn't have a scientific explanation. I just kept recording, panning slowly to capture the whole bizarre phenomenon, making sure my own reflection in the grimy mirror showed my face, my expression a mixture of pure shock and utter fascination. This was the explorer's jackpot, the kind of thing you dream of finding but never, ever expect to. The dance of the water droplets continued for what felt like an eternity, maybe 5 or 10 minutes. It was utterly silent, save for my own ragged breathing. There was no hum, no energy field I could feel, just this impossible, beautiful violation of nature. Then, as suddenly as it began, it stopped. The last ascending drop rejoined the faucet, and the familiar, mundane rhythm returned. Drip, drop, tick, as if nothing had ever happened. I stood there for a long time, just staring, my camera still in my hand. the moment was gone. I tried to coax it back, tapping the sink, waving my hand through the air. Nothing. It was just a normal, leaky faucet in a forgotten apartment again. I backed out of the bathroom slowly, a feeling of reverence washing over me. I didn't explore the rest of the apartment. It felt wrong somehow. I had seen what I was meant to see. I quietly closed the door to 7B behind me, leaving the apartment to its secrets once more. When I got home, I watched the footage over and over. It was all there, clear as day. No glitch, no editing trick. Just pure, unexplainable reality. I uploaded the video, of course. I had to. It went viral almost overnight. People called it a hoax, a brilliant piece of CGI. Physicists tried to explain it with theories about acoustics and standing waves. Paranormal investigators called it a poltergeist, but no one could ever truly explain it, and no one ever saw it again. Other explorers went to apartment 7B, drawn by my video. They set up cameras for days, for weeks. All they ever recorded was the steady, monotonous drip of a leaky faucet. It was a one-time performance, and I was the only audience. It remains the single most profound and mysterious experience of my life, a private miracle in a dusty, forgotten room that reminds me that no matter how much we think we know about this world, there are still corners where the impossible can happen. Thanks for joining me on this look back. Stay curious. In the quiet suburbs of North America lies a street unlike any other. On the surface, it's completely ordinary. Same manicured lawns, same cookie-cutter houses. But this street, known as Maple Lane, holds a strange secret. It is consistently, without fail, 1.2 degrees Celsius warmer than the surrounding area. Scientists have been baffled for years. They've tested for geothermal anomalies, unusual building materials, even strange electrical outputs. Nothing. Every test comes back normal. We spoke to residents, people who have lived there for decades. They report nothing out of the ordinary. Life is peaceful, quiet, almost unnaturally so. Some mentioned their gardens seem to flourish a little better, or that snow melts just a fraction faster on their driveways, but they'd never given it much thought. There are no power lines overhead, no hidden industrial pipes below. It's just warmer. It's a phenomenon without an explanation, a tiny pocket of warmth in an otherwise predictable world. The data doesn't lie, but it offers no answers. What could be generating this constant, gentle heat? Some speculate it's a glitch in our reality, a place where the laws of physics are just slightly different. Whatever the cause, Maple Lane remains a quiet, suburban mystery, leaving us to wonder what other secrets might be hiding right under our feet. What do you think is going on? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching.
This old courthouse has stood for over a century, a silent witness to countless stories. But within its walls, one mystery has remained locked away, literally. It all centers around this desk, a forgotten relic in a dusty corner of the clerk's office. For as long as anyone can remember, its top right drawer has been sealed shut. No one has the key. No one knows what's inside. The building's archives offer tantalizing clues. Look at this photo from the 1920s. There's the desk, right behind Judge Abernathy. He was known for his stern demeanor, but also for his peculiar habits. Local lore says he was the last person to use this desk regularly. And then there's this entry in an old ledger from 1938, a few years after the judge retired. It simply reads, "Desk drawer, secured. Key, misplaced." Misplaced or intentionally hidden? We've talked to town historians and descendants of courthouse employees. One story that keeps coming up is about Judge Abernathy and a controversial case he presided over just before his retirement. It involved a land dispute between two prominent families, a case that supposedly tore the community apart. Some people whisper that the judge locked away evidence, something he couldn't bring himself to destroy, but couldn't bear to see the light of day. Others say it's just a time capsule, filled with personal mementos from his long career. The not knowing has become its own legend. For decades, the drawer has resisted all attempts. Custodians have tried their master keys. Maintenance crews have jiggled it, pulled it. It felt like desecrating a piece of history. The mystery was more valuable than whatever could possibly be inside. But today, that changes. After getting special permission from the County Historical Society, we're finally going to solve this. We've brought in a specialist, a master locksmith named Arthur, who has a passion for antique locks. He's not just here to break it open. He's here to understand it. He's looking at the lock now, examining the craftsmanship. He says it's a high-quality pin tumbler lock from the early 20th century. A serious piece of security for its time. He's going to try to pick it first to preserve the integrity of the desk. He believes brute force should be the absolute last resort. Arthur is laying out his tools, an array of tension wrenches and delicate picks. It's quiet in here now, just the faint click and scrape of metal on metal. You can feel the anticipation in the room. Every person here is holding their breath. This isn't just about opening a drawer. It's about unlocking a piece of the town's hidden past. He's been working on it for about 20 minutes now. He stops, wipes his brow, and studies the lock again. He says it's a tricky one. The pins are worn in an unusual way, suggesting it was used frequently and then suddenly, not at all. He's trying a different pick now, a slightly different angle. The silence is heavy. It's almost as if the desk itself is fighting back, refusing to give up its secret. He's muttering to himself, feeling for that tiny shear point, that one moment where all the pins align. Click. Was that it? No, a false set. This is a game of patience, a conversation between the locksmith and the lock. The judge clearly didn't want this opened icily. We're all leaning in closer. It's been nearly an hour. The Historical Society director looks nervous, maybe regretting her decision. What if there's nothing inside? What if the mystery was better than the reality? Wait, Arthur just froze. He's turning the tension wrench with infinitesimal pressure. There's a sound, a solid, definitive thunk. It's a sound no one in this room has ever heard from this desk. He did it. He actually picked the lock. He's slowly, carefully pulling his tools out. He looks at us and nods. It's open. The drawer handle, untouched for 80 years, is now ready to be pulled. Who should do the honors? It feels right that the Historical Society director should be the one. She steps forward, her hands trembling just a little. She places her fingers on the old brass handle. The air is electric. This is it, she pulls. The drawer groans in protest, scraping against the aged wood. It's stiff from decades of stillness. She pulls harder, and it slides open. Everyone crowds around, peering into the dark space. What did Judge Abernathy lock away with such determination? Is it evidence? A confession? Gold coins. We all lean in, our eyes adjusting to the dim light inside. The first thing we see is a small, leather-bound journal. Its cover is worn smooth. Beside it, there isn't a stack of documents or a bag of money. Instead, there's a child's drawing, faded but still vibrant, of a simple house with a smiling sun above it. And next to that, a single, perfectly preserved pressed flower of forget-me-not. The director carefully lifts out the journal. Her hands are shaking as she opens it to the first page. The handwriting is elegant, deliberate. It's Judge Abernathy's. She begins to read aloud. The entries aren't about legal cases or town disputes. They're letters. Letters to his son, who passed away from an illness as a young boy. The judge writes to him every day, telling him about his life, his hopes, his regrets. He talks about the pressures of his job, the difficult decisions he had to make. The controversial land dispute case is mentioned, but only in the context of his own moral struggle. His wish to be a good man, a man his son would have been proud of. The drawer wasn't a vault for a town secret. It was a private sanctuary for a grieving father. He locked it, not to hide a crime from the world, but to protect his most vulnerable feelings, his conversations with the son he'd lost. The last entry is dated the day of his retirement. He wrote that he was closing this chapter of his life and entrusting these memories to time. The misplaced key suddenly makes sense. Perhaps he lost it on purpose, a final act of letting go. There was no grand conspiracy, no hidden treasure. There was just a story of love, loss, and a father's quiet heartbreak. The truth wasn't a shocking revelation that would rock the town, but something far more profound and universally human. We came here looking for a mystery and found a lesson in empathy. Sometimes, the greatest secrets are not the ones we keep from others, but the ones we keep for ourselves. This desk, once a symbol of a forgotten puzzle, is now a monument to a father's enduring love. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey. Sometimes history isn't about the big events, but about the quiet, personal stories hidden just beneath the surface. If you found this as moving as we did, please like this video and subscribe for more explorations into the forgotten corners of our world. We'll see you next time.